Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Josh Wonders Why. We're so glad you're here watching us tonight or whenever you are watching this live stream. If you're new to this experience, it's a weekly discussion that I have with Pastor Kelly here, typically on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, where we just talk about a variety of topics. Could be religious based, could be biblical based, could be current events, could be food, could be math, could be whatever's on our mind at the time of the live stream. So if there's everything that's on your mind that you would like to discuss or have us discuss in this forum, just chime in the comments, do a private message, do a public message, message us individually. Just let us know, because we're just trying to figure out what people like to listen to and watch, and we're just guessing. So if there's other topics that you'd like to hear about, feel free to chime in.
It is Josh Wonders Why. So, if you pick out the topic, you are the one who's wondering.
So I need to change the name and take the name off of me and put the onus on the group, right?
No, because it's a great name. It's a great name for this segment.
Just say Uprooted Faith Wonders Why is what I should name it, right? So tonight we'll be tackling the complex topic of immigration. Now, I know it's got a lot of publicity with the presidential debates, the congressional debates. We're not picking a side. We're not talking politics and talking about different policies.
I'm not anyway.
Okay. Well, there you go. You can keep it closed-lipped.
I'm talking about the Bible.
Really, what we want to talk about is just what does the Bible tell us about immigration? And then as we unpack that, the ultimate discussion and question would be, how should we as Christians take that the guidance in the Bible and respond to it, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to talk about. So if you came here to talk about politics, pick the wrong Josh Wonders Why, maybe we can table that for next week. And if you want to talk about that more, if there's enough interest, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So let's just talk about immigration in the Bible. So the first thing I want to start with, before asking any questions, maybe this could be a question. When I was doing some research, as we go through these verses, right, there's a lot of references to strangers and how to treat strangers and foreigners, right? And the strangers, as I dig into it, it comes back, or that's the translation of a Hebrew term, which is Gerim or Gerim, Gerim.
Oh, okay.
You pronounced it before, I think.
No, I was thinking of a different word.
Okay.
So spell it again.
It's Gerim. It's a
okay.
Gerim.
I don't know.
I wish I would have taken some Hebrew so I knew how to pronounce the letters. But anyways, that is a Hebrew term that basically translates to strangers how we translate strangers. What I found interesting is that what this definition said is that in the Bible, strangers are typically individuals, both non-Israelites and Israelites, who, whether voluntary or involuntarily, live somewhere else other than their own territory and who are therefore at risk. And this could include those who we call nowadays immigrants, refugees, exiles, displaced persons, undocumented aliens, temporary residents. So I feel like, the term strangers at the time may have made sense, but I feel like it's really a broad term for what we today is defined as who a stranger could be, right?
Well, and we have a whole nother idea of what alien means.
We'll get to that in Halloween, right?
Okay.
If that's the alien you're talking about,
yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to start there. So I guess maybe I can ask the question, because I've seen you did a lot of research. You have a lot of highlights. What does the Bible tell us about immigrants, immigration? What can we learn from just the biblical teachings?
Well, I have a lot there, but I'll try to condense it. One thing I wanted to mention is that I typed in refugees, Bible in the Google search engine, and I came up with 5,640,000 results.
Really?
So I think there's some connection there.
I think so. Maybe we picked something right to talk about tonight, right?
So there are Bible verses in both the Old and New Testament. One of the first ones is about Abraham. In Genesis 23, Abraham said, "I am a stranger and an alien residing among you." And he was wanting to buy property so that he could bury his wife Sarah. And but he said, I'm a stranger, I'm an alien, which is true because Abraham and Sarah went all over the place. They left their home, and then God sent them out to go to all these different places. So, and then there's the idea that after the Exodus, the Israelites were wandering around in the desert for 40 years, and then they were living in different places. And there are verses in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, you shall love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So when the reason why they were in Egypt was because Joseph was sold into slavery. Joseph of the famous coat.
Yeah.
His brother sold him into slavery. He ended up in Egypt. He became a powerful person in the kingdom there, and then there was a famine back home, so his brothers came and asked for grain, and so his family came to live with him in Egypt. But they multiplied, and then that's when, way down the road, the Pharaoh at that time decided to put them to slavery. Mm-hmm. So they were aliens in Egypt, and then they wandered around. And in Leviticus 19, it says, the alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And in Deuteronomy 27, it says, cursed is anyone who withholds justice from the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow. And in prophecy in Jeremiah, it says again, if you do not oppress the alien, the orphan, and the widow, and a whole lot of other things that you don't do, then God says, I will dwell with you in this place. And in Zechariah, do not devise evil in your heart against one another. So there's a lot of it in the commands, in the commandments of the Old Testament. And, this whole idea of welcoming the stranger and treating the foreigner as you would a citizen. So then you get into the New Testament, and then you have Jesus, who is all about that love stuff and loving your neighbor.
All about that love stuff.
All
right?
about that love stuff. And
well, before you get there, I want to go back. So the Old Testament, with that, I feel like also the Jewish people at the time, the Hebrews that were exiled, I feel like they could easily understand that law just from the empathy that they were in that situation. Mm-hmm. They can easily say, it makes sense, let's pay it forward. We were in that same situation, treated harshly. We don't want to do that to people that are in the situation now.
Yeah, they just didn't really take that to heart, though.
Yeah.
And then they were taken captive in exile in Babylon.
Yeah.
And, once again, they got to experience that, what it feels like to be forcibly taken from your homeland.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Maybe the first couple generations did empathize, but after that, it sort of it's an old story, right?
Well, and I think that's why they wrote it down.
Yeah.
And and told the stories over and over to try to remember. But yeah, I mean, clearly, even today we have trouble accepting that concept of treating other people as we would want to be treated, or welcoming the stranger.
Yeah.
So Jesus, of course, had things to say. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you, which is really hard to do. And I'm actually going to be talking about that this Thursday on Digging Deep.
Loving your enemy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Loving your enemy and praying for those who persecute you. Yep.
Okay.
And then in Matthew 25, it's a very well-known passage where Jesus separates the sheep from the goats, and says to the sheep, "Welcome in, because I was a stranger and you took me in, and I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. And truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of my brethren, you did it to me." So that whole idea of strength. Oh, I have a book that goes along with that.
Oh, you do?
Can I read a story?
Let's
No,
go for it.
I'm
yes.
not going to read the whole book,
Oh.
although it is delightful and it rhymes.
It's a
which I
Christmas
like.
story.
It is a
It's not
Christmas
Christmas
story.
season.
It's a Christmas book, but Spinner McClock and the Christmas Visit by Rick Dacey. And Spinner McClock is a boy who gets a letter from Jesus in the mailbox, and Jesus says that he's going to come and visit him. And so Spinner is really excited, and then he realizes, I've got to get things cleaned up. I got to clean up my room. I got to dust off my Bible. I got to go through my CDs and make sure there aren't any bad words in any of the songs, because Jesus won't like that, and got to clean this, clean that. And then while he's doing all this, somebody knocks at the door, and he goes to the door, and there's this little poor girl standing there, and he's like, I don't know who you are, but I don't have time. I got to get ready for Jesus, so why don't you go visit my neighbor, Melinda McCord? And then, he shoos her away, and then goes back, gets his shower, and he's waiting for Jesus to come, and he waits for days, and he finally goes out, because Jesus never shows up, and he goes out to the mailbox, and there's another letter from Jesus that said, I'm sorry I missed you, but your neighbor Melinda McCord and I had a lovely time together. So it's that concept of Jesus comes to us in the guise of others, or the other, the one that is not like us, the one that is poor, the one that is dirty and smells bad. Or it's like that song. Tony, you're going to have to help me. What's the song? What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. It's that sort of idea. And I think that's what that passage means, that Jesus was talking about.
And it goes back, I think that goes back to, was it Abraham, when him and Sarah were trying to have a child, and he invited some strangers to come in, right? He didn't know they were angels in disguise, but because he treated them nicely, they rewarded him. That's why I try to treat all strangers nicely, because maybe they'll give me money, right? I'm joking. I don't do that now. I'll be honest. That's a struggle.
That was such a cultural thing then, because you didn't turn people away because they would die.
Yeah.
You welcomed them in, you gave them, food and drink, and took care of them, sheltered them. And so of course he did that, but, unaware that they were angels, or they were God.
Yeah.
And in Hebrews, it says, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. So yeah, there is that idea too.
Interesting. Okay. So all throughout the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, there are verses that back up how to treat foreigners or strangers as you come across them in your own land, right? Mm-hmm. So then I guess the next question would be, so there's the verses, but I think the Bible is also full of various biblical figures that at that time of their existence were considered strangers. So can we talk about that for a little bit? What sort of famous people from the Bible were considered maybe strangers or immigrants at the time?
Yeah, obviously Abraham and Sarah were, because
Yeah.
God sent them out from their homeland. And Joseph, that I mentioned. Moses ran from Egypt because he had killed somebody and hadn't watched enough Forensic Files to know what to do with the body, and so he got found out. So he ran away, and just seeing if anybody's paying attention, and lived as a foreigner. The Israelites, like I said, wandered as foreigners for 40 years. You reminded me Ruth, because she was from Moab, but she had married a Hebrew man, and when he died and her father-in-law died, then her mother-in-law decided to go back to her homeland, and Ruth insisted on going with her. So she would have been a foreigner in that land, and she's in Jesus's genealogy. So, and then of course Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were refugees in Egypt because King Herod of the time wanted to kill all the boy babies because he was afraid that this king that nobody could find would try to take his throne. So an angel appeared to Joseph and said, "You need to take Mary and the child and flee to Egypt." And so they were clearly trying to get away from the danger, the potential of harm. And so they were foreigners in Egypt.
Okay. So plenty of people in the Bible were foreigners, and we got plenty of Bible verses. So from all this stuff, I guess, what should be the Christian response to foreigners or immigrants? And it's maybe a complex story and maybe a complex answer, because there's factors that go in.
Yeah. So you had mentioned to me the reasons for immigration during Bible times being similar to today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So talk to me about some of those reasons.
So when I was researching the reasons that were given in the Bible for the biblical characters, the people that you mentioned, they were all considered strangers because they left their country due to war, famine, persecution, fear of one's life, which I think that could be tied up in the previous ones, or seeking a better life, or the main ones that they give for why people left one country to another. And I feel like those apply to today as well. Those are the same, probably the main reasons why people do leave and flee one country to seek support in a different country.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it's not like it's fun to do that, right? It's not like, oh, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to flee my country and in fear for my life and go to another country. It's the desperation that is so great that you will do anything to get to safety, to get your family to safety, or to be able to earn money to send back to your family so that they don't starve to death.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those are the reasons. I don't think it's ever a casual decision.
Yeah.
And it's hard because we are accustomed in the US anyway. We're accustomed to our personal space, our family space. And when a lot of people come into the area, then, people start to feel threatened.
Yeah.
Like there's not going to be enough. And I get that. I think even in the early church, they developed systems of helping people, of helping the widows and the orphans. And so there's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
But as a Christian, we can't read the Bible and say, well, immigration's not in there. This issue of people fleeing one country to live in another country, we can't say that's not in there, because it is. And it goes back to what Jesus said, to whenever you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. And that should give us pause, I think, as Christians.
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing?
And the other one, like you said, is love the Lord your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And then that goes into when someone asks, well, who's my neighbor? Thinking, oh, it's my friend. Mm-hmm. Jesus gives the story, the parable of the Good Samaritan, as far as the Samaritans to the Jewish people were like the enemies. They were the outcasts, and the fact that a Samaritan came by and helped a person of the Jewish community sort of like flipped the script on them, right? And said, well, your neighbor is not who you think like your best friend, your next door neighbor. Your neighbor could very well be your enemy, right? In a way.
Yeah, because in the story, the Jewish man beaten up and left in the ditch was seen by two of his people, the priest and the Levite, who didn't stop. And yet it was the foreigner who stopped and helped. And of course, there's also the added thing about where you have to accept help.
Yeah.
You sometimes have to accept help from somebody you think is your enemy, and then you find out, well, I guess we're not. I guess we don't need to be enemies. But I think a lot of what happens with the immigration issue is that there's fear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear built up, fear, like I said, of not having enough space, enough supplies, all that. And yet...
Or just fear of, we'll say fear of people or a race they don't know.
Right.
Or don't know.
Or
well,
they have...
Right? Or have
prejudices. They have assumptions about.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's another issue. But we've seen how people make space for others. Yeah. When refugees came from Ukraine and people opened their houses to them, we've seen that it's possible to make space. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to open their house, to a stranger. In some cases, that might not be the best thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think we have more than we think we do.
Now, let me ask you this. I didn't give you this question beforehand, but I was thinking about it. So I feel like, in a way, then, the church should be the pace setter for how to handle immigrants that come into this nation or into the U.S., right? Mm-hmm. Do you feel the church does a good job of doing that today?
The church with a capital C or churches? Because I think some churches do it well.
Let's unpack both, yes.
I think some churches do it well. I think also that until it's personal, it just seems like an issue. But when you meet someone, years ago, there was a family that was involved in the church where I was working. That was long before I was a pastor. But the woman, she had two daughters, one that I think both of them had been born in the U.S., and then she had her mother with her, who spoke no English, and they were from Mexico, I believe. And the woman who brought the family here thought she was here legally. She had papers. They weren't real. Somebody had sold her fake papers.
Okay.
But she believed that she was here legally. And she was working in the school as an interpreter, because in that school system there were a lot of migrant families, and so there were kids who couldn't speak English, and then lots of parents who couldn't speak English. So she was actively doing that. I think she must have been volunteering, but they were discovered. I don't know how, and she had other family members too, and so they were all to be deported. Her daughters could stay, but the one was just like in elementary school. So, but it became really personal because I had known this woman. I had known her younger daughter, who'd been in my children's choir, and it had a face.
Yeah.
You know, if the issue has a face, then you start to see it differently.
Sure.
And it was just they'd been in this country for so long, and it was just such a heart-wrenching thing.
Yeah.
And they left. They were deported. So I think, and some people in the church did try to intervene, try to help, but there wasn't anything they could do in the end. I do think some churches do a good job of, welcoming groups of refugees, working with other agencies in places where people need to get out, and providing places for them to stay. Church members will open their house. It's not a permanent thing, but until they can get settled and get jobs and housing and all that, when it's personal, it's different.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So yeah, I think some churches do a good job with that, and others. And I'm not putting down churches that don't do anything like that, because you have to have the circumstances have to be right for a church to get involved to that level.
Yeah.
But I think what we can do, no matter what church it is, no matter how small the church is, we can welcome the stranger.
Yeah.
And if they don't look like us, then we really need to make sure we welcome the stranger.
But not too much that we scare them away, right? Because
yeah, there's that. Don't chase them down, if they're leaving early. I've learned that the hard way. When people make a quick exit after the church service, don't chase them down. They don't like that.
Or step in their way, step in the door. Hey,
no,
how you doing?
You can't leave. I want to say hi.
Well, good stuff. Well, it's been a good discussion on immigration. So to sum it up, the Bible has plenty of stories and people and verses about immigration, but it all sums up with the Old Testament. Jesus was saying basically to the Jewish people, be empathetic. As you were exiles once, be empathetic to these exiles now. And unfortunately, over time, that message was lost as people started to, further generations, but then they're reminded again with moving to Babylon. And then New Testament could just sum up with Jesus saying, love your neighbor as yourself, right? That's one of the greatest commandments you can have. And if we just practice more empathy and loving our neighbor, society in general in the world would be so much better, right?
Yeah.
If I give everybody a Coke, that would be nice as well. But
I think that we need to get over being afraid, because if you choose to follow Jesus, Jesus doesn't guarantee your safety.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think we can trust God.
Yeah.
To get it all together in the end. But on this journey of life, Jesus said, you will have trouble. So if we think that we can follow Jesus and just slide through life with no worries, no fears, no dangers, then we are fooling ourselves. Because to choose to follow Jesus is to choose to live dangerously sometimes. Jesus calls us sometimes to do things we don't want to do, or that scare us. And I think we have to stop being afraid of people we don't know. And I think that's what Jesus was getting at sometimes. It's just because you don't know someone, just because they're different than you, watch those assumptions that you hold.
Yeah.
And, when it does get personal, those assumptions will go out the window.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thanks for coming here and spreading your wisdom at this Josh Wonders Why. Appreciate all of you watching as well. Looking forward to this Thursday. We'll be back live at 7 o'clock Eastern Time for Digging Deep, and you'll be talking about, I already forgot, but it's about something about loving your neighbor or enemies or praying for your enemies.
Praying for your enemies.
That's probably the one I struggle with the most. It's like I can go all the commandments, but when I get to that one, really, Jesus, do I need to, is that a real one, or can I just,
Yeah.
no. So we'll have that, and then we'll be back next week for Josh Wonders Why. So have some fun discussions coming up. Well, I don't know if fun, but interesting discussions. So next Monday night, Kelly and I will plan to tackle another, we'll say a hot button topic about separation of church and state. Be curious to get your feedback on that.
Okay.
And then after that, we come into the month of October, and we'll maybe go a little bit lighthearted at that point. We'll be talking about supernatural beings in the Bible. So Old Testament, New Testament. We'll spend a couple weeks unpacking all the supernatural beings.
All of them?
I know, we got to spill forward. But yeah.
You got to make a list.
So we have a list. So if there's any supernatural beings that you have, I guess you're curious about hearing about that came across in the Bible, type them in the post or type them in the comments or contact us. But we will talk about those. And then maybe the Monday before Halloween, we will be doing taste testing of some interesting flavored Kit Kat bars from around the world. So I know
We did this once. It didn't go well.
It didn't go well before.
So I'll see what you bring around this time.
I'll make sure to lay off the matcha because I think we
had a lot of matcha
tasting
flavored.
like grass and dirt. But yes, we'll be taste testing a variety of Kit Kat bars.
We
with
do
flavors
that
from
for
different-
you.
so
you don't have to waste your money.
There you go. And then again,
I thought maybe we were going to do like Halloween Peeps. Don't they have Peeps?
Yeah, but they're not different flavors. There may be one or two different flavors out there. Maybe I'll bring those.
Well, can we have Peeps
as well.
anyway? Because I like Peeps better than
I'll
Kit
bring
Kats.
Peeps. There are two different, I guess, different flavors I can get on that one.
Okay.
I saw them in the stores.
Yeah,
So
do they have like candy corn flavored Peeps?
I don't know. I'll do some research.
Okay.
So again, that's what we got going up for the next couple of weeks at Josh Wonders Why. But if you have any topics you would like to hear us talk about, feel free to put them in the comments or make a post. You can post anonymously. You can send a private message because, as Kelly reminds me, it is Josh Wonders Why, but I would like to wonder about stuff that is relevant to you. So if there's anything that you're wondering about, I'd like to wonder that with you. So put that in the comments. And until next time, thank you for watching us. Have a good day.
Bye.